like someone threw a Subway sandwich at at law enforcement. And I believe the grand jury decided not to indict the man who threw that sandwich.
But other who have working food service jobs or even like retail jobs have kind of told similar stories about people being afraid to show up to work.
Did you just not get enough attention as a child?
Let's do a little role play.
Yeah.
I'm ACB, you just came up to me. I'm about to sign your book. You're about to be ushered away in 20 seconds. What are you saying?
So I think like ACB has more in common with the gays than she thinks that is.
Very insane that Nepal is in shambles right now.
The US, like Americans are too comfortable with not overthrowing the government, if you ask me.
Americans are too comfortable with sitting still and not revolutionizing themselves. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Washed Up, where we are reporting on the news so that you do not have to listen to the legacy media your grandparents did.
And this is episode 24 coming at you from Washington, D.C., where we've kind of been slowly covering what's been going on with the National Guard deployment here, the federal takeover of the district, and that's going to be our first topic today. So, do you want to just jump right in?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so this happened like 3 weeks ago where they deployed the National Guard. We've been talking about how there's been this kind of buildup of people. We've seen it on the mall, also on the metro. But at the same time, even though crime rates are reportedly coming down with like murder rates, carjackings, we haven't really seen that big of an impact on the street itself. It just feels more like a psychological imposition.
The only impact that I've seen on the street are a bunch of signs saying to stop Trump's takeover and just added people in the metro, like the National Guard and whatnot, but we talked about that last week. I've been seeing them a lot more, honestly, this past like week and a half. I think that it's because of the metro route that I've been taking.
Yeah, I mean, there's some really evocative pictures that I've seen in like the Washington Post where it's the guard on the metro itself, and that probably does deter crime in like that very confined space where, people don't want to be acting out and then immediately like face the consequences of it. I've also seen the guard on like 14th Street as well. But do you think it's having a deterring effect just from what you've seen so far? Like the rowdiness that is pretty typical in DC. From my standpoint, it hasn't really gone down. It's still pretty visible.
I don't think from my standpoint either it's gone down. I still hear the same amount of noise. Not that the guard is here to take care of noise complaints, but I don't think I've noticed extra crime or less crime. If anything, I've noticed crime more. We kind of talked about it last week where it's kind of that effect of when something is pointed out to you, you start to notice it a little bit more. I think I've noticed people be angry about it. Like no one that I really interact with in DC, even like acquaintances or people that I see every day now, are big fans of it. I hear that the mall may stay through December, or the National Guard may stay through December though.
Yeah, the timeline of it is weird because I heard that also, but then I also saw in the Washington Post that they were saying that Congress would have to vote to extend the, I guess, deployment through past 30 days. So that would be coming up pretty soon. It's been about a month already.
Hmm.
And I've heard that there's not really like the gumption in Congress right now to approve of that. I don't know if like they're reading the public sentiment and seeing that this isn't really like going over that well, or if it's like a funding issue. But I've read that Congress is not that thrilled to possibly extend it, although I also did see that December date mentioned. So we'll see. I don't know.
It'll
Um,
be pretty cold out there.
yeah. But
But
something you had raised was like seeing signs on the street.
mhm.
People like posting up posters, like stickers, whatever, that had like different messages and slogans on it. And so I've seen a couple of those recently. There's this one here. I'll put a
You can
screen
put
recording up,
right here.
edit it in, but it says nullify fascism, and then there's a quote. Fascism, I will note, is spelled wrong, but
Right.
but it has a quote by President John Adams, and it says, "It is not only the juror's right, but his duty to find the verdict according to his own best understanding, judgment, and conscience, through the direct opposition to the direction, though in direct opposition to the direction of the court." So he's talking about jury nullification there, which is this idea of like if the jury of someone's peers doesn't think that this case warrants like a punishment or indictment, I believe it's called like a grand jury can decide not to have the charges move forward to like an actual trial. Or like a jury that's selected can just decide like we're not going to prosecute even though we think that the person is guilty. And that's jury nullification. And so I saw that sign up and I was like, how does that apply to this idea of nullifying fascism? Well, there's been some instances of pushback against the guard deployment, like someone threw a Subway sandwich at at law enforcement. And I believe the grand jury decided not to indict the man who threw that sandwich. And it kind of is this resistance to, even though the federal government is saying we want to have this crime crackdown, you also have to have the jurors cooperate and actually, I guess, indict or go forward with charges. So
I've heard pushback against the DC mayor actually for the support that she gave for the guard being deployed here as well. Have you heard anything about that?
I've heard like two takes on it. I've heard some people really critical of Muriel Bowser who are saying like she should be resisting more. Like clearly the city is very agitated. Our leadership as her being the elected official should be like giving more fiery rhetoric against Trump. Then I've also heard arguments saying that like she's doing this strategically because she knows like we've
From
talked
the
about.
inside out.
Yeah, like we've talked about last episode, Trump wants a spectacle. He wants the pushback so that he can justify cracking down further. So if our mayor, Muriel Bowser, is just gray rocking him and not giving him anything to work off of, that might be the most effective way of getting the whole city through this unscathed.
And everyone in DC is pretty against it. I think that there's only about 30% people who are actually in support of the guard being here versus the greater country. That statistic I think is much higher in the support. Still less than 50, I'm pretty sure, but higher than the people in DC who are actually experiencing it.
And so there's other cities that have been brought up as potential candidates for this, even though everyone pretty much agrees like there's not the federal authority in other cities besides DC. But like Chicago's been brought up a
Chicago.
lot, Baltimore's got brought up a lot, and that has the respective governors of those states very resistant. So like Pritzker in Illinois has been signaling like you don't want to try this, basically. And Westmore in Maryland, same thing. Have you seen any updates on that or?
I think that a lot more people are in opposition to the guard going to cities where there's no jurisdiction over it. Because, I mean, you could dislike the fact the guard is here and think that it's so unnecessary and it's just as fear mongering, it's just a scare tactic or anything like that. But at the very least, there is that ability and jurisdiction to be able to do so versus in any other like normal American city, there's not. So I even hear Republican Trump supporters saying that that isn't okay versus like here in DC, they're like more in favor of it because the rule of the law is that that is allowed to happen.
Mhm. I know there was some court decision this past week. I don't know which court it was that ruled, but that said that his Trump's deployment of the National Guard to LA a couple weeks back was like not allowed. And
Hmm.
so I don't know what the consequences of that are necessarily, but that kind of sets the tone of like he doesn't, like you said, have the authority in these other cities, so he can try it, but he's gonna have some pushback from the judicial system, whatever form that might take. Although then I also saw another ruling that kind of went in favor of ICE, where it said that they were allowed to like stop people or kind of even, and some people are saying like profile people in LA, for instance, on the basis of like if they're speaking with a Spanish accent or they
Oh
look a
God.
certain way or they're working like in a from a Home Depot or something. And there was a, I think it was SCOTUS ruled that they could use that information as a justification to stop people, question them about their status, immigration status, and possibly even deport them based off of that. And that was on the basis of there would be other mitigating factors that would not amount to discrimination or profiling according to Supreme Court ruling, but would actually amount to like investigative policing that they're allowed to do.
I think that especially in a city like this, if they were to implement something like that, actually in all cities, it's more diverse than other places. That would be actually crazy. Um,
Yeah. I mean, in my personal opinion, it does kind of amount to profiling if you're going to be pulling people
right.
over because they like look a certain way, sound a certain way, even if there are other factors, um, whatever. It doesn't really, I think the argument is kind of ridiculous personally, but I'm not on the Supreme Court, so
No, we're
I'm
not.
I'm
We're not.
Brett Kavanaugh. I think he was the one who had written this like concurring opinion to it, but yeah.
Is there anything else that you want to talk about in terms of what we've seen in DC though?
Um, Not really. We can circle back, but I think talking about immigration raids is a big part of it because a lot of what's been happening, a lot of the people being arrested, it's I think over 2,000 arrests at this point, and a lot of them are immigration related. So like ICE has been cracking down. Have you seen a lot with that or heard
Yeah,
anything?
actually, I didn't even tell you this story. I'm just remembering this. I recently have been working at a restaurant, and at my restaurant, there was somebody who was an ICE officer who came up and was talking about asking for some names, and we actually didn't know these people at all. And we were kind of like, what is this guy talking about? And then he went around and like went somewhere else. That was pretty crazy. I think that in not only the restaurant that I've been working at, but other places as well have been really cracking down more on like identification and having papers. That is something that the place has been cracking down a little bit more on. And because of that, I think people are really afraid of immigration and of ICE, so they're not particularly coming to work that job, or they might like work a different job that may be more lenient or lax about their papers or about identification or anything like that when it comes to, those typical forms like the I-9 and, the W-2, whatever's required to actually, I guess, legally work in that way. And I've definitely noticed that. I think that that's not, I mean, I've been talking to a lot of different people about it. It's not only happening at the places that I'm familiar with, but other people who've working food service jobs or even like retail jobs have kind of told similar stories about people being afraid to show up to work. And it's honestly even happening in San Diego. Like I remember talking to a couple friends about how people are scared about ICE there as well. I mean, more so here, I think at least what I've seen close up. I can't for sure say about San Diego because that's through secondhand, but from what I've experienced, that's what I've been seeing.
Yeah, and the thing about ICE is like it's interesting because they have this kind of like sweeping authority that has been building and building. They've been recruiting all these like people saying, I think like we'll pay for your schooling if you join ICE. I don't know. I just think it's very aggressive and
It's
kind
like the
of
military
target.
too. That's how they
Yeah.
get you. Like they target young people who need money, young people who want their education paid for, young people who don't know their path, and then they get you with like that cult-like mentality. And I'm not here to hate on the military because I think that there are some necessary functions to society, and the military is one of them. But the way that it's going about when there could be other ways to uplift the military, such as better benefits or better support systems within it, and not maybe targeting freshly 18-year-olds. Did you ever have like the military come to your school?
No, but like I know what you're talking about, the pipeline, like coming from a military family. I'm obviously not in the military, but couple generations back, like everyone was up until me. And it was sort of, yeah, like once you get out of college, you either are expected to like maybe enlist or go to school on a scholarship to become an officer, and then that would be your career. And so they do have this way of kind of like steering people, and it can feel a little like predatory almost. I don't know.
When circling back to what you said about ICE, though, I have seen a little more advertisements about joining ICE, especially in DC. I think there are a lot of rumors on social media about what ICE is able to do and what it's not able to do. I think there was a TikTok going around talking about how whistleblowing, like if you whistleblow on like other people, you're able to get an award for that. And
It's
like the
like the
second,
Soviet Union.
right. And the second I looked it up, I was like, oh yeah, that's fake. I feel like I didn't even have to look it up because that
Okay.
would be actually insane. It would be a wild goose chase. Um,
Yeah.
but there are people, there was actually, I went to this party 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago maybe, and I met this person who wasn't even was not even Republican, not even Trump supporter, nothing. Like I think that this person was actually very left-leaning, and this person had mentioned that they were going to get the ICE prize by joining, and that was their next step in their career. And I couldn't tell if it was a joke or not because I had just met this person through like mutual friends. I didn't know anyone at this party really. But me and my other friend dissected it a little bit and we were like, was that guy being for real?
Huh. Well, that's interesting. I mean, whatever PR they have is quite, I guess, effective. And we had talked about when Kristi Noem was selected as DHS secretary, we were like, why did they do that? But I think I'm starting to understand because she is very good at kind of using the optics and the PR to, I don't know, recruit people to join ICE, I guess. Maybe her story about shooting Cricket the dog.
Oh my God.
Full circle moment. Full circle because we talked about that when she was appointed at first, and I think it broadcasted something that Trump wanted in a DHS secretary. Like, yeah, we want someone who can leverage the media to generate buzz and get attention and recruit people. I've seen I've seen a video of her playing in like the airport, for instance, where it's like DHS little plug in the airport, but anyway, speaking of like ICE and deportations, there was a pretty big one that just happened in Georgia. It was basically at a plant where they make batteries for cars. And there's some details here, so bear with me. But it was like a joint venture with Hyundai. Hyundai says that none of these people were employed by them directly, but they were there in Georgia to set up this operation to manufacture car batteries, and a lot of them were from Korea. Hyundai, I believe, is a Korean company, and they were here on B1 visas, which is sort of like expected to be here for about 75 days, and it's like a provisional thing. Um, Most of them are saying that they were here like legally on these visas, although like the Trump administration is saying no, they were here illegally. But about 400 ICE agents came to this battery manufacturing plant and arrested about 400 um, workers there, a lot of them from South Korea on these B1 visas or here illegally. It's not really clear at the moment, but they arrested them, and then they had to negotiate with South Korea, like, well, are we gonna detain them here or like send them back? Like, what's the state of of these people? And negotiated a deal with South Korea where essentially we're gonna fly them all back to South Korea. But I don't know if you had any just like initial reactions to the story. This was probably the biggest ICE raid that they've had since Trump's administration.
Negotiated it. Where, so who was paying to send these people back to?
I think, oh, to send them back?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I think they worked out a deal with South Korea.
Okay. Well,
to fly them all back. I don't know if you remember, like a while ago, they were flying people to like Colombia, for
I do
instance,
remember that.
and there was like yeah, like a back and forth about is Colombia going to take them or not, and eventually I think they did end up taking two planes of people, but I think it was a similar thing where they just needed to like get the logistics hammered out. I don't know who paid for it, but seems like South Korea agreed to like take them back as opposed to keeping them detained in the US. So kind of crazy because it kind of undercuts a lot of what Trump has been saying about like bringing industry here.
Right.
They were trying to set up this new factory, and they were here on provisional visas, which means presumably like once the factory's set up, they would go
Then they would go
back,
back
and
anyways.
then we would hire Americans possibly to work in this factory. But if you shut down the setting up of the factory before it's even set up because you want to like I don't
It
know.
almost feels like he just wanted to make a point.
Yeah.
Like he
As
does all
usual.
the time. It's
Well,
like it's not even like I feel like we're barely even analyzing
it's like the layers of contradiction are always so great that it's like, what other point is there other than he's trying to prove something?
he's always just trying to prove something. That's a really big spectacle and something that obviously a lot of people has been brought attention to, and it shows something like, oh my God, like I'm deporting all these people on this provisional visa because
Well, I think the administration claims that they were here illegally, but when you look at like how who was actually here and why, at least some of them were on that provisional visa.
like I just it's always just Trump with a little bit of a I need somebody to look and see what could happen to them.
Do you ever wonder, like, did you just not get enough attention as a child?
Oh, we should
Is
look
that
at
what
his
that
birth
is?
order.
Yeah, we'll get there.
Sneak peek.
Um, I don't know. I've looked into like I've tried to kind of psychoanalyze a little bit his upbringing, and is he just like a spoiled
We should read
kid?
his tarot cards.
Like, do you think he was just like really spoiled as a child, so
Oh
he
yeah.
demands and expects everyone to meet every demand, or do you think he was like neglected and his parents were never there for him, so he feels the need to like get all this attention by lashing out all the time?
Or maybe a girl broke his heart when he was really young and he just it was a really bad
Or like a
situationship.
sibling rivalry? What
There's so
produces
it's
a
actually a
Donald
mix of
Trump?
both. It's a mix of everything that we just said
Yeah, probably, honestly. I don't know.
and sugar and spice and nothing nice.
Was it Trump's time at the like I think he was at a military academy for a while and I don't know. Like what did that do to his psyche?
Another thing to wonder and analyze how the military has affected Donald Trump.
I mean, he loves like the militarization of everything, the use of like local police forces and obviously now the National Guard as sort of a
Power play.
yeah, exactly. So I don't know if like where that leads, but he does seem to have an affinity for the military.
Circling back to the Hyundai story, what do you think if there was a way to do that correctly?
I mean, it's a
Tough
tough
question. Tough
question.
question.
Yeah. That's, I think, I don't know, because in my view, like, there's not really this urgent need to bring manufacturing back to the US in the first place. But, like, if we are gonna do that and it makes sense because the company thinks that's the most profitable option, then like go for it. Like if you want to set up a new factory because you have this vision of manufacturing here and that's gonna like cheapen production costs and make the goods more widely available, then like sure, set up a factory. Um, and you can bring in people on visas, like get the thing running. But then I think the company should be able to hire whoever they want at that
Right.
point. So like it's not really up to the government to say like they must hire all American or they must go through this supply chain that is purely American. I think it's the company's prerogative to decide those things so they can kind of set up shop however they want and run the business how they want with minimal kind of oversight, but some oversight. But I think that would make the most sense. It seems like that's what they were trying to do, but then just had this raid that kind of threw a wrench in all of it. Yes.
Something that Trump has always been doing too is that he is saying things like, "Oh, I'm going to create more jobs. I'm going to make
Right.
things cheaper." All these things. I'm still waiting for that to happen. I think with things like manufacturing items within the US or with tariffs on items that would normally not be tariffed. And his long-term goal is to make things cheaper. I do wonder, I'm like, what if that does actually work? I'm thinking no.
I mean, so far the tariff situation is interesting because like he imposed all these tariffs, but then two different courts struck it down, and now the Supreme Court is going to be
Amazing.
the Supreme Court's going to be deciding that soon, and I think they just opened up this initial period of like both sides submit their arguments by like September 19th. So it's coming up. The Supreme Court's going to have to rule, does Trump have this sweeping authority to use emergency power declaration to impose tariffs? And if the tariffs, I've heard people say like if the court strikes the tariffs down, it might be the best case scenario for Trump because he can like shake his fist at them and be like, I tried, guys. Like I did what I said I was gonna do, and they just wouldn't listen to me.
What if
And
they're back channeling right now and talking about it, and Trump is saying to them, make sure to strike this deal down so that I am
he's
still
been,
trying to go through the
yeah,
Supreme Court's not biased towards his ideology.
at least publicly, he's been pretty furious to have his tariffs
Right.
struck down. But like the economics of it, I've heard every economist I've heard talk about it from
Not a
across the
fan.
spectrum says like tariffs. It's kind of almost like drilled in my head now. Like tariffs are a tax on the consumer. It drives up prices, like it doesn't bring back manufacturing. That's an outdated way of thinking back when like steel policy or steel manufacturing was driving our industrial policy, but now we're like a services-based economy and we should adjust accordingly and innovate and outsource the manufacturing if that's what makes the most economic sense, which people largely agree it
Yeah,
does.
you understand tariffs way more than I do.
Well, I hope what I just said is a little bit digestible, but yeah, it's very dense, all of it, and now it's ACB's turn to decide because it's beyond our scope. As we said earlier, neither of us are on the Supreme Court, but you know who is on the Supreme Court?
ACB.
Amy Coney Barrett, and she just released this book.
Tell
Funny,
us where you caught, tell us where you got that book, Colin.
funny little plug. She was doing a book signing just in like downtown DC, and I
What?
thought I would be able to go on a Saturday morning and just like skirt in, skirt out, get the book, get it signed, say hello, but it didn't work out. There was a pretty long line, so by the time that I got there, I was like running late as usual, and Um, I feel like this is a trend where like I attempt to go say hello to like meet a politician or in this case Supreme Court justice and I either show up like too late to make it happen or I don't like think it through and there's always like more hurdles than I expect. But in this case, I was able to go and like get the book, stand in line for like 45 minutes, but then she had to leave. So I got to see as she was being like ushered out. But I was thinking I would go up to her and say like
Okay, wait, let's do a little role play.
yeah.
I'm ACB. You just came up to me. I'm about to sign your book. You're
Okay.
about to be ushered away in 20 seconds. What are you saying?
Okay, I was gonna say it's so great to meet you. Thank you so much. I remember watching your confirmation hearings when I was a freshman in college during COVID times, and that was a really dark time, but it was really inspirational to see your appointment, and I was really happy when you got confirmed. And I just wanted to say thank you so much. It's inspiring to see a person with faith and deep convictions who's in this position of power, having to make important decisions, but weighing up the apparent contradictions of your personal life and your public life and doing it with grace and tact.
Wow.
I was running it through my head like over and over again. I wasn't gonna like probably be that like boom 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 about it. Like I would see like the vibe, but if I had to say something to her, that's what I would have said. So next time.
Next, next, maybe we'll send her this
I
link.
wanted to make some allusion to, remember like Trump's unofficial State of the Union and
Yeah, I do
we
remember that. Didn't we talk about it?
yeah, we covered it on episode 9.
Oh my gosh.
Because I
How
remember
do you know that?
I went back and looked because I was
Oh,
like, what did
okay.
we say about it? But she rolled her eyes
What did we say about it?
she was like Trump was going down the line, shaking everyone's hand, and
Oh, and she rolled her eyes.
And we were like reading way into it. Like, what does this mean? Does this mean she's gonna like resist his overreach? How do you feel like the Supreme Court's track record has been in terms of complying with what Trump's policies are or like pushing back? It's been a mixed bag.
It has been. I wish they would push back more.
Yeah.
If I were to meet a Supreme Court justice right now, I do not know what I would say to them. I mean, you have the perfect answer. I think
Which one would you be most excited to meet? I feel like
probably
Kagan is underrated. Like she's kind of cool.
I don't know. I think it would be really interesting to meet somebody left aligned and somebody right aligned to it's just really interesting to meet two different types of people on different sides of the spectrum who have the same job and are supposed to operate by the same rule of law. Like, I would kill to pick people's brains like that. Like, that would be a fire interview.
Yeah.
It would be such a cool, like, in a room with two people, panel style questions or something like that. You know what I'm saying?
And the
You could get
court
like Jackson up there and I don't know who else.
Sotomayor, or no, a conservative,
Yeah, conservative.
Clarence Thomas
Oh
maybe.
God. I don't want to talk to Clarence Thomas. ACB, honestly, like maybe it's just because of her eye roll, but she kind of is okay to me. Okay, okay. Maybe I'll read her book. I'm not a big fan of her politics though.
So she doesn't tend to do like public interviews a lot,
Probably a
but
good choice.
but with this book coming out, I think she did do like one of her bigger public interviews since she was appointed, and some interesting headlines came out of it. That they have to be like very reserved and kind of like circumspect when they say stuff, but she was talking about like the Dobbs decision and kind of defending why they overturned Roe v. Wade. And people have been saying, including me on this show, I brought up like, does this mean like they're going to reconsider like Obergefell v. Hodges because they reconsidered abortion? Are they going to like take a closer look at other civil liberties that they've already ruled on and start to roll those back? And I guess in this interview, ACB was like indicating no, like I don't think they really have the intent to re assess like gay marriage, for instance.
I
Um,
didn't see that interview, but I would love to see it because I can't imagine ACB like saying anything of the sort positive about um
I don't know. It's weird because in the interview, ACB was kind of indicating like she thought abortion was a unique situation where it needed to return to the States, but she had real like no apparent interest in looking at other states' rights
but
issues.
that seems so inconsistent to
It
me.
does a
Like
little bit.
what do you mean that their abortion is considered special? I don't know what to say to that
To
because
read her book,
yeah, I guess
listening to the
maybe I
law.
will read it because it really is interesting to me to think to myself like how could you say like what you're saying one thing and go back on another? It seems really hypocritical to me. Not that I would obviously I don't want Oberfell v. Hodges to be overturned at all. I don't think that Roe v. Wade is a good precedent at all for abortion, but I do think that there should be a federal standard for it, and I don't think that it should be left up to the states. I mean, we've talked about this before. Like, I think every person decides their own bodily autonomy. Like, I definitely am pro-choice, but Roe v. Wade was begging to be overturned in a sense that it's a weak standing anyway. Even I remember learning about it officially um in constitutional law class that I took in college and we talked about it and it is really weak. I think even one of the justices back then, I'm forgetting who, had said something about um how weak it is and how it doesn't really stand as a good precedent anyways, which I mean I agree with. I don't think Dobbs is either.
But you know what's interesting? So as I was in line to see ACB, there was a lot of like gay couples in line.
Really?
Yeah. And like some
Why?
of them were even like holding hands, which is like how I'm assuming they're couples. But like I was like, why what what is the appeal? Like, why does an ACB figure, why is she like
Dude, she
a
could be
secret
an
gay?
LGBTQ icon.
But like, why? I don't know what the math is on that, but I was thinking to myself, like, what the factor could be. Like, I think it has something to do with, again, ACB being like a person of faith, but then also being in this high position of power and having to like balance her personal beliefs with her professional life. And there's like this tension there that I think a lot of like gay people can probably relate to, where like they have this aspect of their personal life that is constantly feels like it's at tension with like being a member of society who's like valued and appreciated and can have like professional opportunity and advance in society. So I think like ACB has more in common with the gays than she thinks that is, you know? And
Didn't you say that with any line of like,
marginalization.
yeah, I was gonna,
Oh,
marginalization is the word I was looking for.
maybe, yeah. I don't know. Someone should look into this. These are the questions we would
This is
evaluate if we had her to sit down and talk to.
this is why we are inviting ACB on Washed Up right here, right now.
Open invitation.
Just email us at washedupweekly
We can
at
also we
gmail.com.
can also talk about stuff that she likes, like Catholicism.
We're both Catholic,
Yeah. We
but
could
I
talk
just
about
don't like
Notre
I
Dame. I don't know.
I'm Catholic. I just would never I try not to let my biases impose on what I think, how I think that the law should be interpreted, slash how I think we as a society should follow the rules. I'll say that.
Yeah.
Because it's only natural that natural biases seep in. I think I do okay at it though.
Another big issue that's going on that's probably more of like a headline at the moment is what's going on in Nepal, where basically their prime minister just stepped down and their government's kind of in crisis and their parliament building was set on fire.
Because of a
So,
social media ban.
yeah.
I hear that it was coined like the Gen Z, what was it? Gen Z something.
Mhm.
I'm forgetting what the last word was. Gen
I
Z
think protests,
protest?
yeah.
My first thought was, can you imagine if Gen Z riled together in the US like that and somehow overthrew Trump? Like that would never happen, but that is very insane that Nepal is in shambles right now.
I mean, it's interesting because it happened on the basis of the government was trying to ban these social media apps. I think it was
Right.
like WhatsApp, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. So like that's all of them pretty much. And they were saying like, well, we'll let you have social media like once it fits our prescriptions, but to pissed off all the Gen Z people who use those apps and are using those apps specifically to criticize the government. Like I heard that there's a trend where people in Nepal were calling out like the families of the government bureaucrats saying like they live this wealthy lifestyle. Meanwhile, Nepal is so impoverished in certain regions and we don't feel like we have the opportunity to advance. They're using social media to like spread this around with like hashtag Nepo baby, whatever, you know, that kind of thing. Um,
So Gen Z of them.
and that's why the government was like saying, in part, like we have to regulate. We can't have this open forum, really. And that was
And
like the
then that
straw
was the
that
cause
broke the
of
camel's
the
back.
prime minister being ousted.
Yeah. So there was a, we should say there was a lot of violence in the street,
Yeah,
and 19 people so far
were
confirmed dead.
killed. Yes.
So like where it goes from here is kind of questionable. I mean, like the use of violence to obviously like topple the government is extreme. And I don't know all the nuances of like the political situation in Nepal. Like, was this warranted on the basis of the social media ban? Was there outstanding corruption that the government was facilitating that was not being answered to by the public? And in that case, like, yeah, sometimes, like Thomas Jefferson said, you got to overthrow the government every once in a while if they're
You, you,
becoming tyrannical.
you.
Direct quote.
Did you think about it at all in terms of the US?
Yes.
Is that it? Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the US we've gotten away from our tradition of revolution where, like I said, like Thomas Jefferson, the founding father, said, like our government is based on this idea of the people are the ones in charge, and if the government's not accountable to the people, what other option do you have but to overthrow? And we've gone 250 years so far where we haven't had to do that, which is wonderful. But um, we've also had some really questionable stuff happen in our history. And I think the US, like Americans are too comfortable with not overthrowing the government, if you ask me.
Americans are too comfortable with sitting still and not revolutionizing themselves.
A little bit. Like, and especially when it comes to free speech, which is like our big issue that riles us up. Like, I can't imagine how much are you willing to take with that? Like, if it's slowly being chipped away.
I do think to give the benefit of the doubt to people is a lot of people don't realize what's happening until it's too late.
Yeah, like boiling a frog in the water.
Yeah, and also, especially in the US, there's so many people who are so comfortable and they don't really think outside their bubble. And I'm not saying that that forgives them from maybe not opening their eyes and not looking at things in the way that would be more worldly, but that is a little bit more of an explanation as to why I think that in the US it would be harder to revolutionize in that way. And I also think that the country is a lot bigger than Nepal. How big is Nepal?
Not sure the population, but I mean, like geographically, it's a
And
lot smaller.
economically and diversity wise and also
Sounds like
just
their
power wise.
It sounds like their wealth inequality is very extreme.
Yeah.
Like it's extreme in the US too, but I feel like in the US, even like if you're middle class, lower middle class, your quality of life and your economic situation is still better than the majority of the world. So like we should look at wealth inequality, what causes it, etc. But like if it's not like as extreme as Nepal, then people might get complacent or comfortable and feel like, like it's not great, but we can get by. We can still have luxury items like an iPhone and all this. And yeah, I mean, it does kind of breed this complacency that we should question ourselves, like when is the right time to overthrow the government? I think that should
Today.
I think that should be an active question in
No,
every
I do think
American's
that
mind
too.
all the time. But that doesn't mean you should act on that impulse every time you feel like you should overthrow the government.
Well, if everyone acted on that impulse of every time they feel that they should overthrow the government, it would just be January 6th.
Right, exactly. And that's tyrannical in its own way because you have to have the rule of law and
Right.
order as a way of like preserving society so that everyone can actually thrive and like build a life that they want.
But on the real note, like I do understand the question of how far is too far, how much are we willing to take from government control? How are our rights being chipped away every single day? And I do think that is such a valid question that not many people, not that not many, but not enough people are thinking of in terms of why are we not starting a revolution?
Well, to that point, I would say like coming for free speech is a big one. I think it's a huge red flag in
Right.
so many ways.
That's just the start.
And a lot of people will say coming for guns is like the other indicator. And recently, the DOJ was floating the idea after the shooting in Minneapolis,
With transgender people,
yeah, of having like a blanket ban on transgender people buying, owning
which is
guns.
so wrong.
And yeah, like how do you justify that to yourself? If you're someone who's very pro civil liberties or very pro gun, how could you be okay with that as a blanket policy without any like real questioning of like what what demographics might or may not have anything to do with the rate at which people commit like mass shootings or misuse weapons. It just seems like they are reacting negatively to this most recent mass shooting and trying to extrapolate out some policy that is going to be completely unconstitutional from it.
And I don't have the data on the demographics of everyone who's ever committed a mass shooting, but I don't think that transgender people are at the top of that list.
Like both of us are getting at the same thing. Like there is not really a logic to it.
No.
If you're pro civil liberties, you should be pro civil liberty. If you're pro Second Amendment, be pro Second Amendment. Don't have these like weird carve outs because you don't like a certain group of people or you feel like they're a threat somehow. The chipping away, like we're talking about, is how you end up in a tyranny before you even realize it. And
And I guess the people who have the most power are the ones who are benefiting the most from the chip away, the ones who don't really see it as a chip away at their power or their their civil liberties. And again, I'm anti-gun for the most part. I think that gun reform, I mean, you listen to the last episode to listen to our opinions on gun reform.
But whether or not Nepal will have anything to do or like spell out what could happen in the US, I certainly hope not. I don't want some kind of like revolution because I think it's often like violent. Like people died in Nepal, more people might still die depending on how it goes. So we don't want that, but it does raise interesting questions that should be on the forefront of every American's mind. Like when is the right time to do
For
something like that?
revolution.
Anyway, do you want to do our Bury the Leads to wrap up? We haven't done that in a
Yeah, we
while.
haven't done a Bury the Lead in a second,
Okay,
but
so a quick little timer. I think you can go first.
this week for my Bury the Lead, I am going to talk about birth order and the importance of analyzing birth order and why I think there should be more research into it and how birth order directly could directly equal compatibility. And this is coming from somebody who is an oldest sister, so maybe a little bit of a know-it-all. And that has to do with my birth order. Everyone who I've ever been friends with are oldest siblings, and I think that it is so blatantly obvious when somebody is either a youngest sibling or when they're an only child. And I think that in birth order, you almost need people and siblings to humble you. I think and also when people say that they grew up around a lot of cousins or like whatever, and that was their siblings, unless you were directly living in the house with these people at all times growing up with them, I don't qualify that as siblings. Hot take, hot take. Sorry to the only children out there. But I think that being born in a certain order sets you up for a way in life that impacts you in all your relationships, in the way that you share things, in the way that you work as well. For me, I'm friends with a lot of oldest siblings. I would say that I'm a very oldest sister. There's a lot of things that I like, such as control. Um, I know other people have that as well. And I'm always thinking about like my siblings and what I could do for them and things like that. And I meet other people who maybe don't think that way, and I'm like, you are immediately not an oldest sister. I am truly offended when I get called a middle or youngest child. Actually, middle child's not bad. If I get called an only child, that is when I get offended because I truly think I'm the antithesis of an only child. And I think that only children are greatly offended by this fact. Why? Who knows? Because there's so little research about this and what could be proven, but like there's a common theme that no one likes being the middle child, and there must be a reason why.
Okay, that was
Only child, not middle
that's very
child.
interesting. Like we said, I wonder what birth order Donald Trump is. Anyway, so my very lead this week, I'm going to be talking about it's Suicide Prevention Week this week, and September is, I believe, Suicide Prevention Month. And so I just wanted to talk a little bit about some things I've learned over my course of my life, some personal experiences that kind of inform what I think about this topic. In the past, I've made a podcast about it. Maybe I can like plug it in the description of this video, talking to some of my friends when another one of our friends died by suicide when we were in high school. And that was obviously like a pretty traumatic experience. And I think people underestimate sometimes like the impact it's going to have on others around them. And I just think it's like, it's the kind of thing where a lot of times like maybe they feel like they don't have meaning or like their life is worthless or they don't have value and if they were gone no one would miss them, but I if I could just say like one thing about it, that's not true. So many people would miss any one individual who dies by suicide, and unfortunately, I think that suicide has a way of all the pain that the person was going through and feeling so alone and feeling like they don't matter. Unfortunately, when they choose to die that way, it doesn't just make that pain go away. I think it has this terrible effect of displacing it onto everyone in their environment. And unfortunately, like there's some debate about like what impacts that can have on people, but there is literature that shows that even though like there can be instances of like quote unquote copycat when a suicide happens, like a very high profile person, like recently Anne Burrell died by suicide and it was horrible. Sometimes that can drive instances of copycat suicides. However, talking about suicide and talking especially about prevention mechanisms doesn't in and of itself cause suicide. There's been good like sociological research on this, which I plug in that podcast episode. Dr. Anna Mueller studied this and found that the best way to prevent suicide is not by never talking about it or by making it something taboo. Rather, it's talking about actual practical ways to bring value to people's lives and meeting and connection so that they don't feel so alone in life. And that's why I think it's important to like not stigmatize suicide, but actually have an open conversation about it, which hoping to do in the near future in a couple of different ways. Okay, so coming back from my Bury the Lead, I do think Abby's was really interesting, and her and I talked a little bit off
We had
camera.
a conversation about
Yeah,
birth order.
and like it has been studied, like psychologists have studied this. There was this guy, Alfred Adler, who was really into the idea of birth order and how it like shaped people's personality. But when they run like the Big Five personality, if there's any correlation to birth order, I think they found no statistically significant correlation. But it's interesting how like the common wisdom though says the opposite. Like everyone can kind of agree that the different birth orders behave differently.
And that they can agree that everyone is offended by being an only child, even though it's okay. The most only child thing is how offended only children get when they get called an only child. Like, that is the most only child thing ever, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't know. There does seem to be like a touchiness about it, or like insecurity, and like I don't know, can't relate to that. But like,
I mean, Colin and I both have
sorry
siblings.
to them. I mean, we were also kind of throwing some shade off camera to only siblings that we knew. Sorry to you out there, but we're saying like, how many well-adjusted only siblings can we think of off the top of our head? And there was one, our good mutual friend. I was like, yeah, she's
She's
well-adjusted.
pretty well adjusted.
But everyone else I've met, I'm like, they can't really share. They're very self-conscious. They feel like they're like missing something in their lives and make it everyone else's problem.
They're prone to outbursts,
Not emotionally.
not emotionally mature. I think
Sorry.
I was talking about the worst birth order, and I was saying the youngest boy with multiple older sisters.
And I said guilty.
Well, it's like that's me. Yeah, I was like, okay.
Although, in my defense, I feel like I have a twin sister, and I feel like that kind of balances.
Were you younger than her?
Yeah. I do think, yeah, there's something to be said about the stereotypes around the different birth orders, and even if psychology hasn't revealed any like profound truths there, I always think the colloquial wisdom is valuable and like worth exploring.
I think I think so too. I was reflecting on my oldest daughter-ism, and the reason why I actually thought about this was because I have a dating app, and one of my prompts is I'm an oldest daughter or something like that. And I was thinking about Bury the Leads, and that's how I came up with this because a lot of people will swipe up and be like, "Oh, what does that mean?" or something like that. And the correct response is, "Oh, I'm the oldest too. Like, what are you gonna do about this?" or something like this. You know what I'm saying? But when it comes to like my experience as the oldest child, like I think even my parents will joke about it now is like one being like a guinea pig, two like helping out your siblings a lot, three like molding the path. I think that is very like traditional-esque, like oldest children things. My parents would always tell me like how are you supposed to you're supposed to set an example for your siblings. Like every single time I got in trouble growing up, that was like the number one thing they would say. They'd be like, "What are your siblings going to think about this when they find out?" And I think that that has very much molded my personality. And I think that a lot of oldest daughters specifically of like like Filipino oldest daughters or like families of culture, I think, go through that a lot.
Yeah, like this kind of unique pressure to be a certain way, behave a certain way. I could definitely see that. Not, I can't really relate because I'm,
You're
but
like the opposite of me.
But like my oldest sister was definitely sort of the most like well behaved of us siblings, and me and my twin sister were always kind of like out there pushing the envelope a bit. And I think my older sister, looking back
But
at
was she well behaved or did she get away with more?
my older sister or my
Yeah.
twin,
No, 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 your older sister.
oh,
Like,
she
did
was
she
well
like
behaved. Yeah,
secret, like
no,
who's able to keep more secrets and stuff?
no,
Oh, really?
no, she was like definitely the best follow the rules out of the three of us, and I think she would look back at my twin sister and me when we were in high school and be like, "Wait, you can't do that. Like that's not allowed." And then me and my twin would be like, "Yeah, we can." Like, there's no
Well, it's funny because the older you get, and like looking back at my siblings, like right now, my sister's in high school and she does things, and when I'm home, I'll be like, don't do that. And my sister will turn to my parents and be like, how come Abby's telling me this? And they're like, listen to your sister. And then she gets mad at me, my sister. And I would be like, I wasn't allowed to do that when I was 15, when I was 16, or whatever
respect your elders.
like that. But when it came to my brother, he's 3 years younger than me, so I feel like there isn't that much of an age gap between us. But even with him, like when he got to high school, he was able to do way more than I was versus when I was in high school. But it's just really interesting. I think that having different boundaries on yourself as a child, maybe that's what it is, boundaries when you're growing up exposes you to a lot of different ways that you're going to experience life. And I think that those things impact you way longer than you think.
Yeah, I can see that.
Anyways, your Bear the Lead, the podcast that you're referencing, I listened to this podcast before
I
last.
remember you were in the newsroom, I was in the newsroom making this podcast, and you had to probably listen to me like playing the same clip over and over, and
I
I
do
felt bad.
remember that. No, I don't feel bad.
It was like my final projects for one class, I
Yeah,
think.
I remember that, but I listened to the final project when you posted it on your Instagram last year, probably around a year ago now.
Yeah.
And I will say that you guys should listen to it. Yeah, good listen. I think that bringing up a conversation about how like the copycat suicides, I think that's really important to bring up because I think that that's a really like old school way of thinking that a lot of the older generations will say, like a kind of see things happening and swipe it under the rug and let's not talk about it, let's ignore it, let's ignore it till it goes away. If we acknowledge it, it'll just get bigger,
Right.
which I mean that's what you're saying, like that's something that you
I think
have said that research is proven wrong.
there's like some trends where that might be true, but I think unfortunately, like with suicide, it's kind of has happened universally across human history, and it's something that like people are going to encounter one way or another in life. Like maybe they're going to read about it, or maybe, God forbid, like they'll have someone that they know die that way and
Hmm.
have to deal with it. And so it's like the argument of sheltering people where no one's going to talk about it because we're afraid that they might have like this copycat instinct or something. It kind of misses the mark because, like I said, if you're going to be finding out about it anyway, reading about it, hearing about it, to drive the conversation underground or to make people feel like stuck, like if I speak about this, then there's going to be a negative consequence, then I think that is going to drive the core driver of suicide, which is feeling alone and feeling like there's no outlet or no one to turn to for help when there are resources and there is help out there. And like, no matter how bad your life might feel in a particular moment, you have to take a broader view of your entire life and recognize it's so hard when you're young because like you think whatever you're going through is like the most important thing that's ever going to happen and you don't have that perspective. But like take it from, I would say, 23-year-olds, like we still have so much more life to live, but it gets better even from like 16 to now.
Oh my
So
gosh.
much better.
I if you could say one thing to your 17-year-old self, one sentence to your 17-year-old self of advice, what would you say?
I mean, kind of just, yeah, like it gets better. Don't,
Such a hard age. Being 17 is so hard. One of the hardest things in the
yeah.
world.
I would say something to my 17-year-old self that would be validating of like what you're going through hurts and it's real, but it's not everything and it's not all that life is. And so whatever feels like it's going to overwhelm you or like it's never the end of the world. Um, you're going to be okay no matter what happens, even though yeah, some really bad stuff can happen in the meantime. And then it gets better eventually and like you can never predict that I'll probably have low periods again in life that reach that same level of like depth and sadness, but at the same time, I can also look forward to the opposite of knowing that I can also be, as much as I can be sad, I can also be happy. So,
I think the difference between low lows now versus low lows then is kind of like what you're saying. When you're that age, you almost think that that is just everything it's ever gonna be. Like I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, this is everything. I wasn't able to look ahead at all. Versus I think now when I do have lower periods, I think to myself, oh, like I always think to myself, this is so stupid. I repeat this in my head, like the waves, this will pass. Like I will always like say that, like the ocean, like the tides will change. Like it always, and it does. Like once you hit like lower lows, you're going to hit higher highs. Like it's just like
law of equilibrium, like
exactly everything,
everything has its flow.
and everything has so much en like this is gonna get so hippie for a second, but also scientific. Everything has energy, and it
What goes up
only
must come
makes
down. What goes down
sense,
must go up.
like scientifically. Anyways, that just got really philosophical for a second. But if you are that age and listening, it will get better.
Yeah. I think
And I hope that 25, 26, 27, 20, beyond Abby can say that to 23-year-old Abby as well. Like, I think that it only gets better. There's no such thing as peaking in life.
yeah, it's like none of us know what we don't know, and so we all have to figure things out as we go along, but that's literally what life is about. And if you unfortunately make a decision to like cut it short, then you'll never see what could happen and could be. And that kind of you're robbing yourself, obviously, but robbing the people who would love to know you or you know, to have that connection with you. You're robbing everyone of that experience. So I don't know if yeah, I'll just leave it at that. That's all I got for right now.
One of my favorite creators, she made this video about depression, and her name is Anna Akana. And in the video, it's like something I'll never forget. I think I watched it during COVID, maybe a little before that. I was definitely a teenager, but um she was it was an artistic piece about her depression, and she was contemplating suicide, and she was like trying to drown herself in the video. And then the quote that she had said was, there are two things certain in life, death and change. Why not wait for the next wave of change? And that's something I always think about as well. Oh, we'll link that video below too. I love it. I'm gonna show Colin it afterwards, actually.
I was here. There's only two things: death and taxes.
Death, change, and taxes.
Yes.
And in that regard, do you have anything else to add?
No, I think that's all.
Okay. Washed up out.